Привет!
Bonjour!
Welcome to the Morning Brew with Vienna Whyte. I'm Marissa Kay.
I'm Millie Rouge. This is a Yeg Music production. Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
Happy Tuesday. Tuesday.
It's Tuesday, yes.
Tuesday.
Why did I think today was... Yeah, okay, got it.
You know what? I can't talk because I have all weekend long been like, it's Saturday, it's Friday, it's Sunday. And
when you sent me that message last night being like, hey, I didn't see the live stream on tonight. I was like, what day is it today? And then I was like, it's Sunday. What's going on?
I think, you know what? I'm not normally this bad. I honestly think this does happen like when it's not a pandemic to people when it's a long weekend. So I think I was just having one of those long weekend phases where I just like, you know what I mean? Like where you don't normally do things on Sunday and then now you're doing them on Monday and it just feels weird. Like I think that's what happened to me. I'm going to assume that's what happened.
Just kind of vacation brain.
Yeah, vacation brain, but not really vacation. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, I mean, who am I to talk, right? I sat down on Friday to record the Morning Brew, and then I was like, where is everybody? And I was sitting in here. It was a good time.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were frozen like this. You're like,
I know you were
like, making fun of me.
No, you were like, and I think that and I was like, oh no. So my Wi-Fi, I always forget to change my Wi-Fi. I'm such a dink. I always forget. I'm sorry.
Good old technical difficulties.
Right? It's my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think I would learn by now, but nope.
You know what doesn't get old is good old-fashioned Pascha and bringing you Pascha. Are you excited for your Pascha?
I'm so excited. Because you know what? The last time I had the Pascha, like, I don't think I've ever actually, hold on, I want to think before I say this. I don't think I've ever eaten Pascha before. I've just seen it made. I've smelt it. Because I was a teacher's aide, so I can't be like, hey, can I have some? Like, because most of them were like the kids individually made their little tiny Pascha bins or whatever. So I've smelt it, seen it, and it just looks so delicious. So I'm so stoked to finally be like, I've had it and I've tried it.
Oh, you're in for a treat.
Mm-hmm.
You're in for a treat. If you're wondering what we're talking about, I made some Paschas yesterday.
Yeah.
And I told Millie that I was gonna bring them one. So we have like 3 that we made because my brother made the other 2 and I made 2. And then so I'm leaving one for us and then we're gonna freeze those and we're pretty good for bread for a while. But yeah, I'm very excited. It's sometimes it's really good just to have on its own with just like butter or margarine. But I really love it toasted in the morning just because I like crunchy stuff. Because like then you toast it and it like pulls apart. Actually, I could like show you it. Like I was just eating it for breakfast. Like you toast it and then it like pulls apart and it's just like, yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby. And would you say that's really only an Easter thing? Like if someone were to make that in the middle of July, would that be weird?
I don't know. I mean, you can. No one's stopping you. But I mean, like my mom sometimes uses the collage recipe in Paschas, which is basically like the Christmas bread versus the Easter bread. But I mean, they're both pretty much the same thing. One, you just make it a different way and you just roll it a different way. But like for the most part, they're basically the same thing. Unless you want to get really, really Ukrainian village with it and like make it without, I think it's like without eggs. I think it's without eggs. There's a recipe that you can do. Yeah, that's in the old village, in the Ukrainian village.
They didn't use eggs?
I don't know if it was eggs or if it was milk. Or no, not milk. I don't remember.
One of the two,
Yeah, they have a recipe. I think that's egg free. I'm pretty sure.
Is there a reason they would do that though? Like,
I don't know, probably just to like, you know, save their stuff because
save their reases.
It was the 30s and everyone was in a depression. So
yeah. My question, the Ukrainian village not in Edmonton. I think it's outside of Edmonton.
It's just outside of Edmonton.
I don't think I've ever, like, I think I went in elementary, but I haven't been since. I don't really remember it. Do you recommend it?
It is pretty cool. I mean, I recommend it in the summertime, but it is kind of cool in the winter if you're able to go just to like kind of walk
Open all year
around.
round. Oh.
Yeah, because I have a couple friends who work there and they're like actors.
Okay.
So
That's
they're not
quite
allowed to
different.
break character. So it's basically like a giant museum that you just like walk through like a village, which is
Yeah.
really cool. You can like get on the horse carriage and like they take you around and
Cool.
it's really fun. I remember like having a blast as a kid.
Yeah.
I have very fond or not fond, I have very vivid memories of when we would go into like the schoolhouse and the teacher was always like the scariest person because
Yes.
you know if you had your fingernails painted he would like he wouldn't actually like hit you very hard but he'd just like slap your wrists a little
Pretend.
bit
Yeah.
with like a ruler, be like no nail polish, and you're like oh my god it's so scary. And they would like teach you a little bit and
Yeah.
that was like when you were a kid, but if you're an adult you just kind of go walking around. It's a really really cool experience. And
Yeah.
because like everyone has to pretend like they're in the 30s and they have to pretend like they don't speak English very well.
Right.
Yeah, so I sometimes when I go there I sometimes mess with my friends when I walk in. I'm like, oh hi, and they're like, oh god no. And they're
Oh
like,
dear
I just hate
Jesus.
it. And I'm just like, so what's this? And they're like, Marissa, I'm gonna kill you later.
That's so funny. I love that.
Yeah, it's super fun. I would recommend it. It's really really cool.
Yeah.
And I mean in the summertime if we're able to
Yeah.
go, I'll take you. It's really really
Okay.
cool.
Cool.
I
You
play
told me
there in
this.
the summer sometimes too for Ukrainian Day with
Ooh.
Euphoria. It's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. That would be so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just cool that they have that because I mean they don't really have very many other like heritage museums, if you will, like in Alberta that I know of. Like, I mean, there's Fort Edmonton Park, but that's just about Edmonton, right? Like,
Yeah, and I mean like the Ukraine, like I think the reason why it's like a whole village is just because the Ukrainians came to the prairies and we just kind of like
mhm.
took over. So like there's a
Yeah.
lot of saturated Ukrainians in like the prairies,
Mhm.
Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
there was one guy who came in who was like from Ukraine, and he went to the village, and he thought that he thought that he could actually like buy one of the houses, and he was like interested in like living there. And they're like, no, 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 sir, this is a museum. And he like just like didn't understand, and it was like really adorable.
That's so
Um,
cute.
yeah, I was like, wow, what a wholesome thing.
Aw.
It's just like, this is a nice house. I want to live here. And I'm like,
In the
man,
village, yeah.
yeah, it was really, really cute.
That's adorable. I love that. Aw,
Yeah.
poor man. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'll just settle for Edmonton life instead then.
You gotta.
Well, yeah, if we can, let's do it. That would be fun
Mm-hmm.
because Fort Edmonton Park is closed till I think 2021, I think,
Oh, really?
or summer of 2020 something. It's closed for a few years, is all that I've
Well,
heard.
hopefully by August we'll be able to go. I mean, we'll
Yes.
see, but August would be pretty sweet to go.
Yeah.
Because it's like, yeah,
I
it's
feel
really
like
really fun.
the only thing I remember from the Ukrainian village is the gift shop for some really weird reason. I think all I can remember is the gift shop,
See,
which
and
is
it's
really
funny because,
sad.
like, for me in Fort Edmonton, the only thing I can remember is the rock candy. Everything else, I'm like, I
Yeah,
don't
that's
remember.
iconic because you could actually go into the store, like the old-fashioned store, and buy it. So that was a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can actually do that in Ukrainian
Ukrainian
Village.
village, maybe
I'm
not.
not sure.
Yeah,
I can't remember. I don't think you can. But
yeah, probably
I don't
not.
know. It's just a cool thing because it's like stepping back in time.
Yeah,
Which, I
yeah,
mean, for someone who loves Outlander, I was like,
yeah.
this is exactly up my alley.
Well, I like too that like in Fort Edmonton Park and stuff, you could like go to a movie theater. Like you could actually physically go into it and like watch a movie, and that you could like people get like have weddings there and do stuff like that. And like and the little carnival they had, I went to a few years ago because they had that free Fort Edmonton Park Day, which was a zoo. First of all, don't go on free Fort Edmonton Park Day because it's terrible. But it was super fun. Like at that carnival's like you can actually ride all the rides and go through everything. It's super fun. Had a good
Ooh.
time. Yeah.
You know what and there's another thing that was going on like during Halloween time where you can go to Fort Edmonton Park for like there's like the all ages time, and then there's like just the adult time where you can go. And I
Yeah.
really, really wanted to go one year and I just didn't get a chance. It was around my birthday.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to go for my birthday. So this year, hopefully I'll be able to go for
Yeah.
my birthday. That would be so much fun.
Yeah. I can't remember what it's called. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's like,
Haunted? No, something with ghosts.
yeah, something like haunted
Ghost
Fort haunt. I don't know. That's just like
Fort
search this
Haunt?
keyword,
Fort?
search engine optimization.
Yeah.
Ugh,
Help me out.
I don't know.
Well, Speaking of scary things, let's talk about our topic of the day.
Scary things. I don't even know if I read the topic of the day. I'm going to be just as surprised right now what the topic is.
Well, our topic of the day is learning a new instrument.
Oh God.
Which can be scary.
That is true. It
See
can
my
be.
nice tie in there? I tried really hard to make something out of nothing.
Yeah, learning an instrument, I guess it depends on your level of like already innate musicality about learning an instrument. But I mean, I've had a lot of lessons in my time, and I've learned a lot of different instruments. And I had varying experiences with all of them. But I'm curious to know yours first. What are your experiences?
So when I was 5, I think I was 5, I immediately wanted to do piano lessons because my sisters did it, which is a very like youngest child-ism thing to do. So I asked my mom if I could do piano. So I started doing piano at this lady's home, and I did it for about, I don't even know how long, like a couple years. And then I switched teachers quite often, just because not a lot of music teachers were necessarily teach for a long time. Like I think my music teacher was like in her 40s or something. So anyhow, I started with piano. Piano is really, really hard because if you're not musically inclined before you play piano, you really are starting from like square absolute one. So you have to learn like the theory of, of what the piano is and how you read sheet music and how you have rhythm. So when you start at a young age, it's nice because, I mean, as much as it's like difficult for the teacher sometimes to teach young kids, it's good to start like the rhythm stuff then, and because you can start really easy and really slow and it doesn't matter, right? So as the years go on, you can slowly start to integrate harder levels and grades. And I think a lot of parents struggle with piano though, because it's a hard thing to keep your kids in. I think a lot of kids lose interest very quickly because the thing with pianos, most pianos, if you don't have a keyboard, it's very hard to transport the instrument. So you can't just be like, go to your room and practice your instrument. Like you usually, if you have a grand piano or an upright piano, you have to make them practice in your vicinity. Like that was my case for my house, which we were really lucky because we had 2 upright piano basically in our house, which was wild. I don't know why we had 2 pianos, but we did. But anyways, so I think that's what really makes it hard with piano is it's just not as like portable as a guitar is, for example. Like a guitar you could bring literally anywhere and be like, I'm going to play. And for some reason, I think to kids there's more of an appeal about the guitar than the piano. I don't necessarily know why, but I think it just comes down to the portability of it.
I think that's part of it. I think the other part is just like guitar seems like a cooler instrument than piano.
I think it's celebrities that portray it better too.
Like anyway, here's Wonderwall.
Yeah. You're like, wow, I love it.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say because I think I'm a little bit biased in that area. Because I remember when I first started taking lessons, I was really excited to play piano. It was like me and my brother, we both took piano, and we got like a little Casio keyboard.
Yes.
And it was I don't know, just like a little crappy little keyboard, and we just like played around with the sounds and stuff, and we would fight over who gets to practice. But that was just like when the novelty like was still there.
Yeah.
Then as lessons got on, I remember I just hated music theory. I just hated it, and I was like, I don't get it. I don't want to do it. It just feels like homework, and like I was like, I don't want to do this. And my teacher, bless her, but oh my gosh, she was so boring. She was so boring. And like the reason I got turned off with piano was because of my teacher. And like she like
which
literally
can have a huge effect.
It can have a huge effect. Yeah. And I always tell myself, I'm like, I'm not gonna be that teacher. And I just remember like we were sitting in our lesson and she was like pointing to my sheet. And this is literally how she talked for the entire 30 minutes. She was like, okay, finger on 1, finger 1 on C. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. And I was like, oh my God, this is taking forever. So I was like, I think I was like 10. I don't remember how old I was when I took lessons, but then I just, I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. So then I quit for 10 years because I was just like, piano's boring and I don't like it.
You know what,
So
actually, that's really interesting that you bring up teachers, because I just want to talk about teachers for a second, because teachers have a very large impact in your growth of your instrument. Because when I was younger, I had that one teacher named, her name was Michelle, which is really funny, but she was super sweet. She was like a mom. She was really awesome. But then we moved. I don't know why we ended up moving piano teachers, but we did. And then I had like a younger girl, kind of like our age, I would say, probably at the time, in her 20s, and she was really nice, but like super gentle. So it was like I was more slacking with like what my work I would have to do. And then I remember I switched to a lady who was terrifying. She was actually terrifying, and she was so mean. And my mom was like, "You can't quit your lessons." And I was like, "No, I seriously want to quit because this lady is so psycho." Like, she would kind of do like you were saying, like where she would just sit there and she'd be like, "Nope, that's wrong. Why are you playing wrong? You can't even play right. Why are you playing wrong? You're not practicing." And I was like, like just terrified. And then I switched to my last teacher before I stopped piano lessons, and she was like this saint of a woman who was just like made theory interesting, right? Like she was really good at teaching theory, and she would sit down with me and like help me with it. And just like piano itself, she would like make interesting. Like she would really like, her, just the way she would play was very like unique, and she would make it more fun than just being like, "Okay, put your fingers here, you know, just play this." Like she would like talk about like why it's important to like play the song the way it is, and etc etc. But
yeah, that's
super
interesting
nice.
that that's interesting that you bring that up, because I often find that learning an instrument heavily, and like learning an instrument and staying with the instrument heavily relies on the student teacher relationship. And if it just like, it's like finding a therapist, right? Like you're not just going to
Yeah,
find the first one and it's going to be great. You have to find
you
you
have
have
to
to
play
find
the
a teacher
field.
that kind of, yeah, and you have to find the teacher that makes you feel comfortable, and you have to really gel with. And I unfortunately I learned that the hard way with a student that I taught. They were two brothers, and I'm not going to name names or anything, but I just like in retrospect I was like, we just didn't click as a student teacher relationship. Like I got frustrated with them, they got frustrated with me, and like they would have meltdowns in the middle of their lesson, and I was just like, I wasn't well equipped to deal with that. Like I was still relatively new to teaching, so I
Yeah.
like didn't know how to deal with it. Like it got to the point where my student like sat by the door and wouldn't let me open the door, and they were like screaming at my
Oh
face.
my
They
god.
were like saying, "I hate you," and like, "I don't like this," and they started scream crying, and I was like sitting there and like just like shocked, and I was like shaking. My anxiety was like through the roof, and
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know how to deal with this. So I remember getting my boss, and I was like, and she was like, "Okay, you go, I'll deal with this." And I was like, "Okay." So, cause
Mhm.
she knew the students. So she like sat with them and talked with them, and like, there was like 2 minutes in their lesson left. And she's like, "Okay, he's ready to go back into his lesson." And I was like, "Okay." So I went back in and I started again, and I was like, "All right, you ready?" And as soon as I spoke, back on the floor he was.
Awesome.
I was like,
Yeah.
okay. So then, yeah, so anyway, long story short, I had a panic attack. So and I refused to teach that student, and that student did not like me. um, and I still see them every now and then. They're with new teachers, they're older now, you know, they're
Mhm.
maturing. So like I'm still happy to like wave to them and say hi and stuff. But yeah, it's just, I that was unfortunately one of the lessons I had to learn the really really hard way, was that learning an instrument is learning an instrument, but if you don't have the right teacher, you're gonna hate it no
Yeah.
matter what. Like,
Absolutely.
doesn't matter what kind of instrument you have, you're gonna hate it. um so yeah, and then I had, voice teachers as well. Like I remember my first voice teacher that I had, like he came to my house. He was like a friend of my dad,
Mhm.
and I just remember being like kind of uncomfortable, and like the fact that I had to sing in my own house was just a little bit scary, and like the fact that they came to my house. um and I think it's about the environment too, like having an environment outside of where you are, like outside of your house where other people can hear you. um I think that's another thing, is where you're learning the instrument, that sense of safety, and that sense of like, okay, I can let go a little bit. So yeah, that first voice lesson was a little bit, I don't know, he was fine. Like
Strange.
he was a great singer, yeah, he's a great singer, but it was just like, I just remember thinking like, oh, this isn't for me. And then I got voice lessons later on from another teacher at the Royal Conservatory, or not Royal Conservatory. Alberta Conservatory.
Yeah.
That one, like downtown.
Alberta College or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got lessons there, and it was more like classically based, and I remember like enjoying it, and my teacher was very encouraging. She was like, "Oh wow, you're really good at sight reading. How do you do that? Like, how do you know where the notes go?" And I was like, "I don't know." And it was
I
just really
just
cool.
do.
Yeah, and she just made me feel really good about it, and
Yeah.
and then of
Different
course,
approaches.
yeah, and then I had someone like Rhonda who was basically
Yeah.
also my
Your
therapist,
spirit
which
animal.
just to
So
be
great.
fair, you should not treat your vocal coaches like therapists. But
But sometimes it just happens and you're like, oh, yes.
sometimes you have a family tragedy and then you just cry for 45 minutes in your lesson
Yeah.
instead of actually working on
Yeah.
something. So anyway,
Well, I know like with Rhonda, I think like just like different teachers, I think they all have different approaches. But I think with the teacher that she is, like she teaches a lot of, well, from what I know, she teaches a lot of university students. So they're kind of in that phase where they're past like the high school and like, taking it more lightly, and they're kind of stepping into that point where it's like, now this is a career. So now you have to think about this differently. Like this isn't just like a thing you can not take seriously, right? Like you're pursuing this as a college profession. So this is where you take it seriously. So I think the really cool thing about her was that she really took people that were unable to get past that hurdle and just like spiritually, like physically brought them there, if that makes sense. Like I know the few conversations we had, she was just like just trying to figure out what the fear was of like performing and like why I couldn't just like break through it, right? So she's very intuitive about that, which is for some students I think would be very beneficial. But for more of those like A-type people that are just like, I know my own prompts, I know what to do, I could see it not clicking so well, right? So they would do well with someone who's a bit more
like structured and like this is
straightforward.
what you're doing, like someone who gives that feedback really freely.
Yeah, totally. So I
Yeah.
think, you're totally right. Like it just depends on the type of student, the type of teaching style. It really depends.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think it is the type of instrument that you try. I think that if you just try one instrument, then you might not stick with it because you might not love it right away. So I'm very much an advocate for trying everything, and then kind of seeing what
Totally.
sticks to you.
Yeah.
So, I would say like if a student is not really jiving with piano, I'm like, okay, hey, like, do you want to try ukulele today?
Yeah.
And then they're like, yeah. And then we end up sticking with ukulele for the rest of forever.
Years.
And then after they get bored of ukulele, they're like, hey, I would like to try piano again. And I was like, okay. And then we do that. And it's like a very nuanced thing because, I think it's a balance thing too. Like you have to, if you're going to take an instrument and you really want to learn it, you have to be really sure like why you're learning it. I'd say like just so the teacher can kind of gauge
What to
where
give you.
you're coming from. Like if for example I had known kind of a little bit of what that one student wanted to get out of piano lessons, I might have been a little less like do this, nope, not that. I would have been a little bit more just like kind of lenient and just been like, it wasn't perfect, but that's okay. Like you're just, that was pretty good. Like here are the notes that you should be getting, but for the most part, yeah, you're doing great. Like it's fine. And I wouldn't have been so meticulous. So yeah, and it's one of those things you gotta learn the hard way, unfortunately.
Yeah. Even
And
for
same
the
thing with
students too.
and same thing even with voice as an instrument. Like we all know how to sing. It's just it's like Buddy the Elf says, it's just moving your voice up and down.
So
um,
true.
yeah, but I think it's like the reason why you want to learn an instrument, I think is really important. Like, why do you want to learn it? Do you want to learn it for fun? Do you want to pull it out as a hat trick at parties being like, hey, check this out. I can play the entertainer on piano.
Play
Um,
Wonderwall.
I can play Wonderwall. Yeah, exactly. Like anytime someone yells Wonderwall, you can do it. And that's cool. Do you want to get better at karaoke? Do you want to actually pursue music as a thing? Like, do you want to get into musical theater? Like, do you want to have a healthier voice? I have like, those are all examples from real students that I have. So like, it's a very wide range. So I think learning an instrument, the first thing you need to really communicate with your teacher is why you want to learn the instrument. I think that's really important.
Totally.
Yeah.
Super helpful.
And it also helps them structure the lesson too, of just like, what do you specifically want to learn? Because Sorry, I have a lot to say. I feel like I'm talking a lot. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, no, no. No, I get what you're saying, because I think if you don't tell your teacher, for example, that you really want to learn like a Taylor Swift song, or that's the kind of genres you like to listen to and you want to play like, I think if you never tell them that and they give you classical music, of course you're going to hate it. And of course you're going to be like, I want to quit, So I think if you're more upfront with like you said, like what you want and what you are trying to get out of it, or, what you want to be able to play one day, then it's more helpful. And I mean, when you're young, that's hard to kind of express because you're literally just like 8 or something. But even to your parents or something like that, it's better to be honest,
Yeah. Well, and I'd say like even if you have a kid that you're putting into lessons, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
I actually had this experience with one of my students who, like, she would sit down in her lesson, she just like didn't know her notes, and she'd been in lessons for years, which I was like, how do you not know this? I was like, you've been here for years, like you had a really good teacher before you came to me. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm personally friends with that person, so I was like, I know they taught you well. So I was like,
Right.
what? So I was like trying to rack my brain. We were going through their book, and I was like, you have to practice. And then it dawned on me one day. I was like, do you want to play a song that's not in your book? And she was like what? And I was like, well, do you like Disney? And she's like, yeah. I was like, okay, what movies do you like? And then she like listed them off. I was like, okay, what about Beauty and the Beast, the theme song? She's like, yes. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I told her mom and I printed it off. And then the
Yeah.
next week she was like nailing it. And she was
Wow.
like getting all the notes, and she was focusing, like her eyes were on the page, her hands. If she messed up, she knew, and she went back. I was like,
Because yeah,
I felt like I had a eureka moment. I was like a scientist. I was like, oh my God, the experiment
a
worked.
revelation.
So
Well, it's so true.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like it's about like, because my whole philosophy as a teacher is like, yes, we want to work on all the technical stuff. Like I want to give you the best that you possibly can get out of these lessons. Like
Mm-hmm.
I want you to be able to take these skills and move them to other songs without me having to sit there to teach you. Like I want these skills to be transferable. But
Totally.
the other thing too is like I say it in the lessons, I'm like, at the end of the day, music is an expression. It's supposed to be fun. And if you're not having fun, then you probably shouldn't do it. You should
Yeah.
find something else that you have fun doing. Like if it's becoming a stressful thing, like
Mm-hmm.
find something about it that is fun, whether that's like sitting down and just like playing, whether that's like hitting a button on your keyboard and just like playing
Mm-hmm.
with the different sounds,
Effects.
or trying to figure out a song by ear,
Mm-hmm.
little things like that. Writing a song too
Yeah.
is really cool.
Yeah. And I think like if you notice your kid or yourself is not practicing, you really need to evaluate if this thing is worth it. Because not everyone is meant for music lessons, if that makes sense. Like some people just like love sports and they just want to continue doing sports. So I
Hmm.
think you also need to be realistic that if it's like, not saying give up right away, of course, but like, set in place your scheduled times of practicing. And if you're not able to commit to that, and if you can't follow through with that and you're trying really, really hard, but for whatever reason it's not working, or you just can't commit the time, then it does save a big step for like your music teacher and for yourself to just be honest with yourself and really evaluate, right? Or maybe be
Yeah.
like, you know what, instead of every week doing lessons, I actually want to do every bi-weekly, or I want to do just once a month, just to kind of keep
Hmm.
myself fresh and learn a new instrument, but not to put too much pressure on myself right away, right? Like I think
Yeah.
that's helpful.
And that's the other thing too, is like, you might take a break from it after a while, and often what happens is people will come back to lessons to me, and I ask them, I'm like, what's your experience in lessons? And they're like, well, I took piano when I was like 5, but I quit. And I was like, I really wanted to learn it again,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Mm-hmm.
that might come back. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd say it's always okay to just try it and see what happens. But
Yeah,
um
find your way
yeah,
back.
it's about finding enjoyment in the thing, right? It's not
Yep.
about drilling those piano drills. Unless you're taking RCM piano, then yeah, you're gonna have to if you want to take the
Yeah,
exams.
yeah,
but
that's a
but
different
if you're learning piano for fun, if you're just learning piano because you want to learn how to play like for Elise, then that's fine. You don't have to kill yourself over
yeah,
playing piano. You don't have to push your kid to practice for hours a day. Like I tell
yeah,
parents, I'm like, 10 minutes a day is fine.
yeah,
Like 5 minutes a day, just going through their song one time every day. If they go through their song one time every day, that's 7 times they practiced
yeah.
in the week. So yeah.
I mean,
And I
it's a
find
big
that sometimes parents put too much pressure on their kids because they're like, well, I'm paying for these lessons, they're going to learn. And it's like,
mm,
yes, but why did you put them in lessons then? If you're just worried about wasting your money, put them, like, don't
well,
pay for lessons then.
You'd be surprised how many parents put their child into music more as a babysitting option than wanting them to be successful in piano or guitar, which I'm sure Marissa's very familiar with.
Don't get me started on that.
You know what? When I was a teacher that would travel to kids' homes, I 9 times out of 10 I felt like a babysitter, which I mean is fine because I really like kids. But I remember I taught a 5-year-old once, which is also like, why did I do that? Because she's 5. But really cute girl and really smart and sweet. But I felt like a babysitter most of the times for her.
Yeah, and I mean, like, for part of it, yes, like it's something for your kid to do for half an hour.
Yeah.
But the other thing too is like you have to remember that it's a skill that you're trying to get them to learn. It's like anything else, like learning their ABCs. They go to preschool, but they learn their ABCs. They learn socialization. That's why I like lessons, private lessons, because it's one-on-one time with an adult that, you know, normally they're in a classroom full of kids, so they don't always get that one-on-one time. So
yeah,
it's really valuable for those kids to have that one-on-one time. But yeah, if I come up to a parent and I'm just like, I try to go through what we're working on with them. If they just like don't seem to care, I'm just like, why are they in lessons then? Like, I'm telling you what to practice and they're like, oh yeah, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. I'm like,
yeah, we'll try. Yeah, and you're like, okay. Yeah, I had a student too like that where we would kind of like that experience you're saying, like some kids with the one-on-one just need that. And he was the oldest of 4 kids. So you can imagine, you know, being the oldest of 4 kids, you don't really get paid attention to. So half the time when he would come to lessons, he was just like wanting someone to talk to, which is totally fine. And I don't mind being that person. But, you know, like it's just kind of sad to see that sometimes. It's like, oh, I just wish.
100%.
You know, but he still enjoyed playing the instrument he chose and everything like that. But some kids just need that.
And some kids just need something, you know, fun to do for half an hour, which I'm happy to be that person. Like, I've had students where like their parent literally told me, they're like, I don't care if they learn anything. This kid had he was on the spectrum for autism, so he didn't really have a good attention span anyway. Sweet kid. He was very like everywhere, but he was such a sweet kid. And he loved music, I could tell. And his mom was just like, I don't care if he learns anything, just let him play music for half an hour. And like, so he was supposed to have piano lessons, but then we did piano for 5 minutes, and then I like brought out a djembe, and he was like, turn on that song, and I was like, okay. And then he just like played that for like 20 minutes, the same song, and it was amazing.
That's so cute.
Yeah, and I could tell he really loved it. And then after the lessons, like their mom was thrilled, and I was like, okay, great, that's how we're going to structure it.
Perfect.
And I've also had students come in where, like, similarly to what you said, was that they like clearly just needed somebody to talk to. Like, I remember, I'm not airing out anything here, but it's just, I remember one student would tell me they would walk in and they'd be kind of like a little bit down. And I'm like, are you okay? And then they just like sat down. And they're like, well, no, because I like didn't get to see my mom this weekend and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, you know, I'm getting bullied at school and it sucks and I hate it and blah, blah, blah. And like, we just talked for, you know, half the lesson.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I was like, do you want a hug? And they're like, yeah. Or they'll just say like, no. And I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
All right. But like, I remember one time my student, I was like, are you okay? Do you want a hug? And she's like, yeah. And then I gave her a hug and she started crying. I was like, oh no. But then she left the lesson and I made her laugh before she left. So I was like, good, you're laughing, you're smiling.
Yeah. Hopefully it made an effect. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So we're actually gonna have to wrap it up for today. But I mean, I know we were talking about all sorts of things regarding lessons, but that's just some of the experiences and feelings and emotions you can have through learning a new instrument. I mean, obviously not all to that degree, but a lot of it when you're younger is kind of what I've experienced. I know what you've experienced. So hopefully those tips kind of help you if you're looking to start a new instrument, but you're not sure how to navigate it.
Or you're trying to teach.
Learning to be a new music teacher. Anything like that.
Man, I could talk about this for another hour. I want to do part 2 at some point.
This is literally right up your alley.
I could talk about this for hours.
Alrighty. So again, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the show today. My name is Millie Rouge.
I'm Marissa Kay, and this show is brought to you by Yeg Music. And if you like the video, make sure you subscribe, like, hit the bell button to be notified when we post a new video. We post a new one Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. every single day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.